Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in. Got a short little one for you today, based on an article that, Lord, give me strength. We've got a prime example of government run amok, basically, here, that I'd like to read aloud for you guys, just because I think it's that important. So, we're going to go ahead here. Roll onto this. So, this is New York is now coming for your fast and heavy electric bikes. This is written on Electrek, which is a blog that generally talks about electrified vehicles in general, be they bikes, motorcycles, cars, trucks, what have you. U.S. electric bike industry has already seen a regulation-heavy start to 2025. Now, New York Governor Cathy Hochul's potential new restrictions on fast and exceedingly heavy, those are interesting terms, electric bikes could add to the proposed and enacted legislation we've seen lately. Hochul proposed in her State of the State address yesterday that Class 3 electric bikes weighing over 100 pounds be excluded from existing electric bicycle regulations and instead be treated more like mopeds. Now, right away, you can see that 100 pounds, that's an entirely arbitrary number. What this tells me is that Governor Hochul has no idea how electric bikes work. Because, yes, I get what the intent of the legislation is here. There are electric bicycles that basically don't even have pedals anymore. They're more or less vestigial mopeds disguised as bicycles. And regular cyclists, perhaps rightfully, are complaining that these things are unsafe or make them feel unsafe. First off, what this does not address immediately is the idea that there could be a heavy style of bike designed to be operated at normal bike lane speeds. Things like cargo bikes. If you've ever seen one of those cargo bikes with the big bucket in the front, those are not light. Electric cargo bikes that still may be regulated below 20 miles an hour, but happen to be over 100 pounds, or ones that happen to be class 3 and over 100 pounds. A lot of the micromobility answers that are coming out of this wave of new electric bikes could get hit by this. I don't, for the life of me, understand why Governor Hochul is doing this, but we'll get to the broader implicit philosophy behind this kind of nanny statism that I so heavily despise. But we'll carry on. That would mean imposing motor vehicle regulations resulting in licensing and registration requirements, as well as disallowing their use in bike lanes. Well, what's that going to do? If you're going to regulate these electric bikes like cars, that is going to mean nobody's going to use them at all, and everybody's just going to use more cars and more motorcycles, which, oh, I see. Now you're doing that because of this congestion charge. Now you get to make more money off of it. That's the real answer. It's the New York State government is starting to realize, wait a minute, instead of getting crammed onto smelly, disgusting trains and buses that are slow and get stuck in traffic, people can whiz around on their own bikes and not have to pay a dime because they're not doing any damage to the roads and they're not taking any public transport, which means the government doesn't get a cut. That's what this really is. The governor explained that this new regulation would ideally help increase the safety of bike lanes. The bike lanes that in New York City are still largely incomplete, first off. You know what would actually help increase the safety of the bike lanes? Completing them. You could maybe try to get them up to the standards of any major European city, including London and Paris at this point. New York now is where London was in maybe 2005. As a reminder, Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes can reach a top speed of 20 miles an hour on motor power, with Class 2 e-bikes including a throttle that allows motor use without requiring the pedals to be used. In most states, Class 3 e-bikes can reach higher speeds of up to 28 miles an hour with pedal assist but not throttle. However, New York State has stricter Class 3 limits that provide for speeds up to just 25 miles an hour. I'm going to mention here that this means it is now more expensive to create and sell electric bikes in New York, which means you're screwing over poorer people who can't afford other options of transit. You're screwing over your working class here by lowering it from 28 to 25 because that implies a regulatory cost. That regulatory cost always gets passed on to the consumer. Oh, Cuomo's even worse. We'll get to... I can do my Cuomo rant. That whole fucking... Going to not be... I'm going to be pointed and I'm going to be angry, but I'm not going to be problematic on this one. Let's go with that. I really don't fucking like the Cuomo family. The reason the Indian Point nuclear plant shut down is because Cuomo is almost stereotypically corrupt. I'll put it that way. Anywho, the proposed new regulations would target Class 3 e-bikes that exceed the suggested weight limit of 100 pounds. Most electric bikes weigh well under 100 pounds, this is true. Common ones weigh between 50 and 75 pounds. However, there are some e-bike models available on the market that can reach or exceed 100 pounds. We've tested a few of them. It's such an arbitrary number, though. It's not based on anything scientific. Does a 100-pound e-bike ridden by a 150-pound rider represent a bigger threat than a 50-pound e-bike ridden by a 275-pound rider? Well, the math would suggest that no, provided they're at the same speed, ceteris paribus, the fat guy on the bike is going to do a whole lot more damage to someone else in a bike lane than the skinny guy on a heavier bike. That would be using the laws of physics, though. That would be using your brain, which I don't think Hochul is doing. Such heavy electric bikes are usually visually similar to mopeds and other light electric motorcycles, often featuring large tires, heavy motors, dual suspension, chunky frames, and other components that add significant weight. However, in a state like New York, where you have to deal with serious winters, including snow, and therefore pretty bad roads, you might want fatter tires, or you might want a better suspension, or you might want a little bit of a bigger battery, or anything like that. So especially in a place like New York, that doesn't necessarily make sense. You know, the roads are crap in that state, so they're bumpy as hell. And you feel bumps on a bicycle a lot more than you do in a car because it's distributed over 2 wheels instead of over 4. However, many heavy electric bicycles are limited to 20 miles an hour and could exceed the 100-pound limit while still not proposing under this proposed regulation due to their Class 2 designation. Right, but on the same point, why do you want, especially cargo bikes, why do you want to limit cargo bikes to being at 20 miles an hour? You want cargo to get to places quickly. That's what makes New York a dynamic city. You want things done quickly. 28 miles an hour is not a risky, horrendously fast speed. It's already, I will grant, if you can go 28 miles an hour, there's no reason you can't be in the car lane, but maybe this means the real question should be, should we redefine how much space we're allocating to cars versus bikes? Especially in light of this new congestion charge, maybe New York City doesn't need to use so much of its space for cars and could stand to put a few more feet of space for bicycles. At face value, there's some logic to this. A 100-pound bike has a lot more rolling mass than a 50-pound bike, and you can guess which one I'd rather get hit by. Okay, sure, but I weigh 215 pounds. I am 50 pounds heavier than an average person who weighs 165 pounds. Does this mean I need to be regulated? Or, God help you, what if there's a fat person who wants to get in shape, but is on that bike and is starting out and is 300 pounds? Does that person need to be regulated? Should that person have to have a license just to use an electric motor on a bike? No, that would be unbelievably stupid. But at the same time, when the rider always weighs more than the vehicle, the weight of the e-bike certainly has a lower relevance to his safety. With a 200-pound rider on both bikes, we're only talking about a relatively small 20% difference in mass. Exactly. It's a bit telling that there wasn't much discussion in the State of the State address about any other road safety issues. Certainly not about the several thousand-pound cars that actually kill many New Yorkers every year. I'm not saying I don't support reasonable regulations to ensure the safety of everyone in the bike lanes and outside of them, but let's get real here. The percentage of electric bikes that are 100 plus pounds is tiny, likely under 1 to 2% of all e-bikes on the road. And even that is a tiny slice of an entire pie that in itself is a tiny slice of the injury-causing vehicle pie, most of which are caused by cars. So I'm not saying there isn't any good regulation opportunity out there for e-bikes, but this is all fluff on top of fluff if you think it's actually about making an meaningful impact on road safety. If they really cared about better protecting cyclists, governments would enforce existing laws to prevent cars from killing them so frequently. Or, they might actually complete their cycling infrastructure. These types of clumsy, heavy-handed regulations are just that. Quick and dirty attempts to appear to be working on towards a solution, when in fact they're largely meaningless in their ultimate impact on protecting lives. Okay, that last sentence is where I somewhat disagree with Electrek. Electrek thinks it's innocent government incompetence because they want to appear like they're doing a solution. I think it's more insidious than that. I think this is an example of a government police state wrapping itself in a blanket of safety to justify taking away rights of its citizenry. It's no secret New Yorkers, like most Yanks, can't drive for squat. Driving in New York City is a hellish task anyway. Any sane person shouldn't be doing that. Congestion charge or no, it's just, that's not... In a city with, again, crowded and smelly transit, but effective transit, and again, an expanding, if incomplete, bike network, there's no reason you should be using a car to get anywhere on Manhattan. They're expensive, there's nowhere to park them, and you're sitting at a stoplight most of the time. But this is what I'm talking about. It's more than this. It's the attitude, right? They can't get a cut. Exactly. Cookies and cream, bingo. This is about a blue state government that is trying to justify spending more and more money on transit because it's something the government controls. It makes the government bigger. It provides jobs under the guise of growing the government. That's what the New York state government is in. That's their interest. The government's interest is in growing the size of the government. That is what's going on here. And e-bikes represent a threat to that because e-bikes, I would argue, bicycles in general, be they electric or not, are about the most libertarian form of transport you can buy with your money, including cars. Because a bicycle barely requires a road. Really, it just requires a somewhat smooth surface. It can even be dirt as long as there's not too many rocks on the way. So it requires very little maintenance. It doesn't require licensing unless you live in a police state that wants a cut of the action, like New York. To the detriment, I will criticize the state of Hawaii for having that, but they offset it with a tax credit or with a credit for buying it, so I'll put up with it. I still don't think there should be licensing for electric bikes, especially when the police around here don't do anything to actually help prevent bike thefts, which do happen. They're not common. They're certainly less common than they would be in a place like New York or Los Angeles, but they do happen. It's harder to steal shit on an island because eventually it's somewhere on the island. It's very unlikely that someone's stealing an electric bike and moving it off of the island. That would be a bit conspicuous. But it's a racket. It's racketeering, and that is as deep and intertwined into New York politics as any force there is. It's basically the government acts a bit like the mafia does. They want a cut. No matter what the business is, the government wants a cut. And they use force to justify and make sure they get that cut. It sounds awfully familiar to a mafia when you think about it that way. I'm not, of course, calling everyone in government organized criminals. The Cuomos, yes, they are organized criminals, but not everyone in government falls under that distinction. But in New York State, what you have here is a government that is... I would call it just overreaching. Another example I can give you of this is somewhat different, but the same principle applies here, is there was an explosion on New Year's Eve with some really rather stupid person inappropriately setting up an illegal fireworks display. Apparently, they put it on a folding table. The folding table collapsed, and it fired into the house and created a giant explosion. Now, as a result of this, the Hawaii state government wants to make fireworks more illegal. Now, the brainpower required to realize that's not going to do shit here isn't that high. Fireworks have already, big aerial fireworks like that have already been illegal in Hawaii for years. Does that stop anyone from purchasing them? Go look at YouTube video of New Year's Eve on Oahu literally any year, and you can see the answer is no. People will buy them either way. What we have here is the government saying, oh, we got to crack down on this for public safety. It's always safety, 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 safety. Fuck your safety, okay? I am a nuclear engineer. I know where you actually need safety limits. You don't fucking need them with fireworks, okay? Fireworks are explosives. You can get hurt using them. Don't be a dumbass and you won't. But if you're a dumbass and you do get hurt, you know what? It's a free country. You had the right to do that. Now, if you blow up someone else's house, yes, you owe them money and you best be prepared to pay for the damages you caused. But if you want to fucking blow up fireworks, it's your right, it's your house, it's your land, it's a free country, you should be able to do so. What Oahu is doing with fireworks here is the same stupid thing we did with alcohol in 1919. It didn't work then, it's not going to work now. And it doesn't matter if it's cannabis, gambling, prostitution, or fireworks, or guns. People like being free. People like being allowed to do shit that they like doing. And if you try to make it illegal, all you do is create a black market. This is economics 101, people. Making something illegal doesn't make it go away. I'm going to say that one more time. This is both conservative Republicans, social conservatives in particular, and for economic lefty statists. So any statists out there, okay? I'm going to say this really clear so you can understand it a bit better. Making something illegal does not make it go away. The only thing making it illegal does is creates a black market. The only quote-unquote jobs you're creating are more demands for police officers to enforce the law you shouldn't have created in the first place. And what's sad about that is it often ends up jacking up other types of crime because cops are too busy trying to find weed on someone, or trying to find alcohol in the speakeasy, or trying to find fireworks somewhere. You get the idea. Okay? Making it illegal doesn't make it go away. Never has, never will. Prostitution still exists. Gambling still exists. All of those things still exist. Now, does that mean you should make everything legal? No, of course. Right. Something like murder is obviously still illegal. I shouldn't need to explain that. But murder is a very different thing from selling fireworks. I think we can agree on that. Or riding a bicycle that goes 28 miles an hour instead of 25 miles an hour. But there is a certain class of people out there that when any bad news happens, the first thing that always comes out of their mouth is, oh, there should be a law. These people are dangerous, okay? These people are wannabe authoritarians or they're wannabe sheep. Either one is dangerous. If they're wannabe sheep, what that tells you is that they are not capable of running their lives effectively, and they want someone to come into their lives to tell them what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And if they're authoritarians, oh, they'll let you know real fucking quick because they will try to control your life. They will try to take over what you want to do. You don't want that. Okay, Benjamin Franklin said it best. And I'm going to paraphrase him a bit because I think there's a section that needs to be added. Ben Franklin once said, "He who would trade freedom for security gets neither." I would add to that, he who would trade freedom for security gets and deserves neither. Do not trade your freedom for security, be that in the form of safety, or be that in the form of welfare, or be that in the form of social services. Don't trade your freedom for security, okay? It's that simple. Don't do it. And don't vote for someone who says they're going to do it. Authoritarianism is never the right answer. You get authoritarianism, that's how you slide into an illiberal democracy and then eventually a totalitarian state. You don't want that. You don't want people. I know it sounds like a slippery slope, but it really is a slippery slope. First, it's, little bitty laws, things like, I don't know, jaywalking. Used to be, here's a great example about restricting your freedom. Used to be that walking in the street at any place at any time was a perfectly normal and rational thing to do. Then the car came along, and the car companies pushed for jaywalking, right? That is not crossing the street at the designated place where the government has told you can cross. They push for jaywalking to become a crime in the name of safety, right? Jaywalking, did anti-jaywalking laws make anybody safer? No, in fact, they definitely did the opposite most of the time, especially, I don't know, if you were black or some other minority. Anti-jaywalking laws came around in the 1920s. If you think police brutality on minorities is a problem in the 2020s, how do you think it was in the 1920s? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's authoritarianism and it's the state. And to them I say, I'm going to quote the all-too-based president of Argentina right now, "Viva la libertad, carajo!" I think I said that right. That's long live liberty, damn it. It's true. Just whenever you see laws like this, whenever you see anything proposed in the name of safety, that's a huge red flag. There's got to be a damn good reason there needs to be a law just to enforce safety. Because most of the time, it's just a way for the government to take more power away from the citizenry. Anyway, that's just my rant on this. I didn't mean to even go this long, but this one, and there are other stupid regulations coming out on electric bikes. California's begun on this kind of stupidity. Oregon's talking about banning all Class 3 e-bikes. There is, here's a really great example, another one. California is talking about a law that would prevent any Class 1 or Class 3 e-bike to be powered with the throttle beyond 3.7 miles an hour. In other words, if you want to use the throttle to go 28 miles an hour, as a Class 3 e-bike allows you to do, you can't do that. You have to use pedaling. Well, if you've ridden an e-bike, it takes a little bit of pedaling before the bike is going to respond with power. That's going to delay you, and if you're riding with the cars, which sometimes you may have to because there is no bike lane, you're going to piss off every car driver behind you. Stupid. It's bad legislation. Not to mention, another one's, I think, Super 73 company in California. They're getting a ton of new regulations and red tape pushed on them this year because the state of California is deeming their e-bikes as too close to mopeds and therefore too dangerous, even though you can pedal on them just like any other in most cases. As a result, I think Super 73 is just talking about moving out of California. So there you go, California, you had an innovative company in your home backyard, you're chasing them away, and that's where I'm going to end this video. What is New York doing? New York, when you have these kinds of regulations over time that just tick, 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 tick away at people's freedom, do you know what people do? They leave. They leave for freer places. It is no coincidence that states like Nevada, where you have much more in the way of civil liberties, is gaining a lot of population these days, and states like New York, Illinois, California, and yes, even Hawaii are losing a lot of people. It's not a one-for-one correlation. But people like freedom, and people don't like being told what to do by the nanny state 24/7. And states like New York, states like Illinois, states like California are really, really fond of telling people what to do. It's left-wing authoritarianism, and it's just as bad on the right-wing side when you've got the states that are in all but name saying you have to drive a car. We will not build any walking or biking infrastructure. And then, enforcing social and religious codes. Again, anti-sodomy laws aren't a thing anymore, but the fact that they were, that's going to hinder a lot of people from coming to a place like Georgia or Alabama or Mississippi. Thankfully, those laws have been off the books for a while, and in general, the social conservatism that hamstrung Southern growth in particular has become at least a little bit more rational in recent years. I don't think there used to be a far-right paranoia, for instance, of the gay agenda or whatever stupidity that was supposed to mean, where, if you're not outright hostile to gay people, they're going to start showing up, and then they're somehow going to diminish the morals of your state or whatever. But no, gay people are just normal people too. All they want to do is, live in your state, like who they like, and be free. Why are you wasting time on trying to legislate that crap? Again, the less the government does, typically the better it can do the things it needs to. God, I've turned into a libertarian today, haven't I? Well, there are certain topics where I feel very strongly on the libertarian bent. Not all of them. Not all of them. There are places where the state does have a role, but nitpicking the speeds of e-bikes and the weights of e-bikes for registration is the state going overboard, in my opinion. Anyway, so that's going to be it for me today. I've got no current consultations on the list, so if you guys are looking for me to, talk about anything, could talk about diet planning, fitness planning, budget reviews. If you'd like me to help you, if you would like me to show you how to get from your current position, whatever it may be, to financially independent and retired early, I can do that. It won't necessarily be easy, but it is going to be a pretty interesting dive. Can do that. Any other questions? AskBullMuscle@gmail.com. That's going to be it for me today, y'all. As always, make good decisions. As good decisions form your actions. As actions form your habits. Habits form your values. As values form an ethos can be the guide star through the rough waters of life. Much love. Come in for the hug. Shoots. See y'all for the next one.